It's time for Media Meltdowns, and on the day that millions of people right around the world were mourning the death of Charlie Kirk as his memorial was being held in Arizona, CNN invites Democrat Jasmine Crockett on the air so she can continue trashing Charlie Kirk with barely any pushback from journalist Dana Bash. Here is Jasmine Crockett. She was, of course, one of 50 Democrats who voted against a resolution to honour the life of Charlie Kirk. And Jasmine Crockett didn't just defend her vote, she went a step further.
One of the things I do want to point out that's not been laid out that honestly hurts my heart is when I saw the no votes, there were only 2 Caucasians. For the most part, the only people that voted no were people of color because the rhetoric that Charlie Kirk continuously put out there was rhetoric that specifically targeted people of color. And so it is unfortunate that even our colleagues could not see how harmful his rhetoric was, specifically to us.
Sorry, guys, I forgot that Jasmine Crockett was the victim in all of this. And it didn't take Jasmine Crockett long at all until she just continued to unleash and lie about Charlie Kirk on the day of his funeral, claiming he was a racist and that he was the one inflicting harm on our communities.
So to me, just like we wanted to make sure that those Confederate relics were taken down, the idea of a new age relic being propped up was something that I just could not subscribe to. And it is unfortunate that more of my colleagues, even on my side of the aisle, could not see the amount of harm that this man was attempting to inflict upon our communities.
The father of 2 has just been murdered. What harm are you talking about? Again, not a lot of pushback from CNN. They just let her sit there and lie and lie. But we will give credit, of course, where credit is due. And CNN's Dana Bash asked Jasmine Crockett about her language, such as comparing Republicans to Hitler.
I am using that language because it is accurate language. When we see the consolidation of power, when we see them trying to chill speech of jokesters, when we're seeing all of this, that is a playbook out of Hitler, and I won't deny it.
Joining us now is Sky News host James Morrow. James, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Great to be here, Charlotte.
Can I get your reaction to Jasmine Crockett? I mean, trashing Charlie Kirk on the day of his memorial, and then CNN letting that interview go on for several minutes and not a lot of pushback.
Well, no pushback at all. And the thing is here is CNN deliberately counter-programmed the Charlie Kirk Memorial Service with Jasmine Crockett. So, this is a real conscious decision here. It's not just Jasmine Crockett that we're talking about here. This is CNN, and this is CNN trying to send a message about what they believe in, and they think, oh, well, you shouldn't be watching Charlie Kirk and the memorial service, which, I found incredibly powerful. And I think a lot of people would have found incredibly powerful and just, fascinating from so many different perspectives, to just have this kind of unhinged bile from Jasmine Crockett that is basically kind of, it's a little bit racist with all of the stuff she's talking about, white this and white that and all of that. It's the exact opposite of the message I think Charlie Kirk really was about, and particularly the speech or the eulogy given by his widow Erica, which is all about forgiveness and coming together. But the thing that in that speech she gave, in that eulogy she gave, the thing that really struck me was the line where she talked about not forgiveness, because we knew she was going to say that about forgiveness, because that's sort of very public Christianity and genuine public Christianity. I'm not just being cynical about it. Of the Kirk family, has been such a part of their being and their essence. But the key thing here was really, to me, the line where she said, there's no riots, there's no violence, there's nothing like that that's happened in the wake of this death. And to me, that's what that all comes down to. This whole idea that when somebody big on the left gets killed or is elevated into the pantheon of the left gets killed, there's violence, there's riots, there's street action, there's all sorts of things. When Charlie Kirk, who has prompted this outpouring from millions and millions and millions, tens of millions of people, around the United States and frankly around the world. I attended the Charlie Kirk Memorial at Hyde Park a week or so ago.
Mm.
They don't, there's no violence. There's none of that hate. There's none of that bile. And, so it's just really telling, I think, what she had to say there.
Oh, absolutely. And she was just full of lies. I mean, I've listened to hours and hours of Charlie Kirk. He had no hate in his heart. He was all about, debate, engaging in debate and doing it so brilliantly. He was absolutely not a racist. And then, of course, Jasmine Crockett can just get away with these lies on CNN on the day of his memorial. It is pretty disgusting. But James, just like you, I went to the memorial in Hyde Park in Sydney, and it was so peaceful. It was so healing, and it was so lovely to be surrounded by like-minded people who just had so much love for Charlie Kirk. And you mentioned Erica Kirk. I mean, how amazing is she? She is so courageous. I couldn't believe that speech she was able to give in front of tens of thousands in Arizona, but of course millions of people watching online, and finding the strength to forgive the man who killed her husband. She said, "I forgive him because it's what Christ did. It is what Charlie would do." I mean, she is an incredible woman. But Donald Trump also gave a very powerful tribute. This was part of his speech.
Charlie's murder was not just an attack on one man or one movement. It was an attack on our entire nation. That was a horrible attack on the United States of America. It was an assault on our most sacred liberties and God-given rights. The gun was pointed at him, but the bullet was aimed at all of us.
I agree with that. That attack on Charlie Kirk, it was just so evil. It felt like it was more than an attack on just one man. It felt like it was certainly an attack on America, attack on the West. And also we heard so many brilliant speeches yesterday, but of course JD Vance, the Vice President, spoke about the revival we're also witnessing. And I really don't think he's overstating it there, because I think a lot of what Charlie said really went beyond politics, went much deeper than that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I mean, look, it's fascinating. And I think what, the president said there was absolutely right. And it comes down to something, Gab, that I think, we may have talked about. I know I've spoken to a lot of people about this idea that, the left thinks the right is evil. The right thinks the left is misguided, wrong, but not fundamentally bad people. And, that's the fundamental difference here. And it was such an interesting sort of duality, because there was, it was a very, religion and metaphysics infused event, as you would expect. But it was fascinating to me, too, how also the president, spoke about Charlie loving his enemies and opponents, and him saying, that he hated them. And it's real. I mean, I love that, because you've got that sort of duality, right, in life. That
So
and this encapsulated everything, Gab. And like some people say, well, there's a contradiction there, and it's like there isn't, because in a sense, it's Erica's job as the widow to forgive in that Christ-like fashion, but then for Trump, to bring it in sort of biblical terms, Trump is Caesar, right? So it's for him to mete out justice, and these two things are not incompatible. I've heard some people suggest that they were incompatible. I disagree with that, but I also kind of feel, having watched that and watched all that, that from now on, whenever I've got a dilemma, it's not going to be like the old cartoon angel and devil on the shoulder. It's going to be like a little cartoon Erica Kirk here, and a little cartoon Donald Trump here, saying, how do you deal with these people who are, coming at you,
Absolutely brilliant. I completely agree with you there, James. Now, we know that the Trump administration is, of course, cracking down on extreme radical left groups fueling political violence. And it's now official. Donald Trump has signed an executive order designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organisation. The president cited Antifa's pattern of political violence designed to suppress lawful political activity and obstruct the rule of law. He cited that in making the decision. So, James, talk to us about what's going to happen here. I mean, can we expect arrests of those who are potentially bankrolling them?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, eventually it will get to the point where people who are funding and organizations that are funding this sort of street violence, because it is funded, because there are people who have at these riots organized for pallets of bricks and things like that to be arranged. We saw in Los Angeles recently there were people who were arranging for gas masks to be arranged so that rioters could go up against Homeland Security and ICE people with tear gas. So we know there's money, we know there's organization. To me, Gab, the really interesting parallel here actually goes back to the 1960s. Now, Lyndon Johnson was president back then. There was a horrific series of lynchings and bombings in the South perpetrated by people associated with the Klan, the Ku Klux Klan, against both Black Americans and white civil rights workers who had also gone down to the South. And LBJ instructed J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI, to use the Civil Rights Act to go and prosecute and smash the Klan. And that's exactly what they did. Now, there's a similar parallel here, but I don't think you could use the Civil Rights Act here. Instead, what they should be using is the RICO acts, which were the originally mafia targeting acts that are about racketeering, organized crime, and chasing down money and money laundering and money going to fund criminal enterprises, and use that, and I'm instructing Kash Patel to be using that in the same way that Hoover used the Civil Rights Act against the Klan in the 60s, to use that to go against Antifa here today in the 2020s.
Okay, and look, James, I have to ask you about this. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has been snubbed once again.
Oh!
He has missed out on securing an official meeting with Donald Trump during his time in New York for the UN General Assembly. I mean, what a joke this is. How embarrassing is this for Australia? It's interesting listening to the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt kind of confirming that Trump will be holding bilateral meetings, of course, with Zelensky, with European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen, with Javier Milei, leaders of Qatar, leaders of Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Turkey, UAE, Jordan. Not our Prime Minister. And why would Donald Trump make the time? I mean, and it says so much about the
he should make the time. I mean, he should make the time. He should make the time, because Australia is an important part of the American security architecture in the Pacific. There's real reasons why we really should be having leader-to-leader meetings. And it's really bad, and it's a great discredit to Albanese that we are not having those leader-to-leader talks. I think it's a really, dangerous situation. But for the prime minister and the president, in a weird sort of way, this is kind of good for both of them, because neither one of them, I think, really wanted this meeting, particularly not a play. Albanese, the last thing he wants, it's not going to go well. He's going to look weak. He could get told off for any number of things, whether it's, having an e-safety commissioner or having, weak defense spending or whatever, so there's a million ways to go wrong for him. And for Trump, it's a meeting with somebody who he's going to have to, if they do meet, say something bad about potentially, about an ally. So it's bad for him. It's just too messy all around. But I think neither one of them really wanted to. And, for Albanese, he's done this sort of studious avoidance of Trump. And sometimes he's gotten lucky and now he's just, I think by avoiding and by, poking the bear of Palestine and all the other things so much, why would Trump meet him? Why would Trump meet him? And that's exactly the outcome he wanted. He didn't want to meet with Trump, and that's what he got.
Oh, look, I think I would love that meeting to happen so Donald Trump could, give him a piece of his mind, I guess.
Leader meeting.
Wouldn't it be brilliant to see?
With a good leader, with a real leader who understands, that our best interests are with the United States, not with China. And that's what we need in this country. But we're stuck with this for the next 2.5 years.
I know. And it's so depressing, isn't it, that just yesterday, Anthony Albanese defended Australia's recognition of a Palestinian state just hours after footage was released showing Hamas publicly executing 3 men. So this is at the same time this was happening. Anthony Albanese was formally recognising Palestinian statehood. And again, it just shows, I suppose, where Australia's loyalty is, and it's not with Israel.
Well, I mean, this is so bad because it's like you can have legitimate grievances. I know some people have legitimate grievances with the way Israel has conducted itself in Gaza. That's fine. But it's like you don't, divorce somebody over this one particular thing. There's a long history here that will have to keep going on. There's a lot of different elements to that relationship, including, again, an important security relationship, an intelligence sharing relationship, which is really important. And to, throw a bomb in this metaphorically by, recognizing Palestine and annoying everybody, it doesn't help anybody. But, this is the undergraduate student politics of Anthony Albanese. He's wanted to do this forever, so like he was going to do it, and he doesn't care, and he's rewarded Hamas, and Hamas now thinks like, oh, this is great. We kill a bunch of people, we blow up a bunch of people, we rape a bunch of people, we act, like the worst savages imaginable, and hey, look, we're gonna get a state. How good? It's a joke, Gab.
Yeah,
Come on.
it is such a joke. It's disgusting, and I don't think Anthony Albanese, after doing that, deserves a meeting with Donald Trump, even though it does need to happen, and it's very sad for Australia that this is the state that we're in now, and that the US doesn't seem to want to have anything to do with us anymore. Now, James Morrow, I have to ask you, of course, about some lighter news, but just some pretty big news, of course, that Disney has caved. Jimmy Kimmel is now returning. So after lying about the most high-profile assassination since the 60s, being suspended for a week, lefties absolutely losing it. We saw Hollywood celebrities kind of in tears, protesters out taking to the streets, and now Jimmy Kimmel is coming back. Can I get your reaction?
I don't care because I don't watch Jimmy Kimmel. I don't like, he's just really not funny. And he hasn't been funny for years and years and years, not since he did the Man Show, but you couldn't do the Man Show today. My God, imagine that. Wow. There'd be a cancellation for you, but that gets down to the huge hypocrisy of this whole thing. Like, I'm in all these arguments with people who say, oh, the right is now just, they're just embracing cancel culture. It's like, no. What has happened now, and it's a very helpful thing, is that the left made a whole set of rules. They made a whole set of rules that were really stupid, and they enforced them on everybody else, but not themselves, around, words of violence and, speech is murder and, all this sort of crap. And now it's like, Trump is turning it around on them, and they're being forced to abide by the rules that they set for everybody else. And so I'm like, well, why is this a bad thing? It's not a bad thing. This is actually like, really, really good. Maybe they'll stop now, but my fear is that, of course, when, they do eventually come back to power, which they will, they're going to say, oh, hey, let's go harder, So, Jimmy Kimmel is like, he doesn't mean anything in the course of this much bigger sort of debate.
No, I agree with you there. James Morrow, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Brilliant to speak with you.
Thanks, Gab.